6 in 10 women going through perimenopause, menopause and postmenopause go through joint pain. So we are talking more than half of the female population. So you are not alone and you're not doing anything wrong. It is just something that we have to be very aware of, that as we go through this big hormonal shift, our chances of joint pain and injury do go up.
Welcome to Thriving in Menopause, brought to you by Prevention Magazine. I'm Zoe Meunier, the editor of Prevention, and we're excited to welcome you back to our 15th series of the podcast. Today, we're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough airtime: joint pain. If you've ever woken up with stiff fingers, achy hips, cranky knees, or shoulders that suddenly feel older than the rest of you, you're definitely not alone. So what is actually happening inside our bodies? Is it inflammation, hormones, aging? And most importantly, what can we do about it? To unpack all of this, I'm joined by exercise scientist and nutritionist Amelia Phillips, who has been in the health and wellness industry for over 25 years and who you may recognise from her role as fitness and nutrition expert on Today Extra. She also hosts her own top-rating podcast called Healthy Her. So she's more than qualified to help us understand the science behind joint pain and, crucially, the practical steps we can take to protect our joints, build strength and feel more comfortable in our bodies again, because life is too short to spend all day in pain. Amelia, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for that great intro. And I echo your sentiment that not enough attention is paid on our joint health. And if anyone has gone through a period of painful joints, it's debilitating. It's exhausting. It really stops you in your tracks, doesn't it?
I'm facing you with some tennis elbow right now, and I can tell you, you use your elbow quite a bit in life, as I've discovered every time I'm in excruciating pain when I try and turn a doorknob.
Yeah. Oh, you poor thing.
Anyway, let's dive in. So joint pain is something so many women experience in midlife. Is it, how common is it? We're thinking, yes, it's just me suffering, but how common is it?
No, you are not suffering your tennis elbow alone. You and all the other pickleball players out there. No, 6 in 10 women going through perimenopause, menopause and postmenopause go through joint pains.
What?
So we are talking more than half of the female population. So you are not alone and you're not doing anything wrong. It is just something that we have to be very aware of, that as we go through this big hormonal shift, our chances of joint pain and injury do go up. It doesn't mean that it's a life sentence, and it certainly doesn't mean we need to wrap ourselves in cotton wool. In fact, if anything, I want to issue a message of hope today that we can navigate and get through this period, even if we do experience joint pain, which we likely will at some point somewhere in our body. Doesn't mean we're sentenced to a life of discomfort. And that's what I'd really love to unpack today.
Absolutely.
To dive into it and work out how we can navigate this period as pain-free as possible.
I like this message of hope that you're giving. So what is happening? What is making these things start hurting? What is going on hormonally?
It really is a perfect storm. Hormones is part of it, but I'll dive into some other factors as well. I guess hormonally, what happens is estrogen is very protective of our joints. Estrogen is lubricating, and estrogen is also very anti-inflammatory. So what happens as our estrogen levels, first they start to fluctuate, which can be really frustrating because then we go through periods of high estrogen, low estrogen, joints don't quite know what's going on. But then as we start to see our estrogen levels in late stage perimenopause dropping off, what happens is our joints don't become as lubricated as they were before. So we see this atrophying of our muscles. We see this atrophying of our tendons and our ligaments as well. And so that straight away starts to show a shift and a change in the structure of your joints.
Yeah.
Okay? They become stiffer, essentially. Right. So that's the first part of the hormonal picture. The second part of estrogen is that it has, when it's at healthy levels, estrogen has a very anti-inflammatory effect. Yeah. So when we start to lose that estrogen, then we see a propensity to inflammation rising. Layer on top of that, if we've got some weight management issues, then we have something called metaflammation. So if you're carrying more than around 10 kilos of excess body fat, chances are that your inflammation levels are already a bit tuned up because of this metaflammation. So body fat, especially around the middle, is very pro-inflammatory. So what we see through midlife as well is for a lot of us, we see the weight coming on. And so that doubles down on that pro-inflammatory. So suddenly a little bit of joint pain gets flared up. And then the other factor when we look at hormones and midlife is that this is a really common time for autoimmune conditions to appear.
Yes.
And one of the most common autoimmune conditions is rheumatoid arthritis, which is joint pain, different to osteoarthritis, which we might chat about. And so that's where you see, that's the hormonal changes. But then on top of that, we've got things like our muscle mass drops. So then we see that beautiful muscle is very protective of our joints. It cushions our joints, it protects them. So as we lose that muscle mass, as we lose that balance and proprioception, then our joints also are under more load. And so that makes them more susceptible. So that's kind of in a very high level that paints the picture. But coupled with the fact that a lot of us, perimenopause kicks off after we've just had kids. We've had a big life change where, our weight and our body shape might have shifted a lot through our baby making years, those that had children. And so you layer in all of those factors as well. And it's no wonder that we start to see some joint issues arising.
For sure, because then you've got all the pregnancy, hormones coupled in with those as well, but all sorts of wonderful things to our joints too. So how can we tell the difference between, say, menopause or perimenopause related joint pain and something like an autoimmune condition or rheumatoid arthritis?
Look, it's really important, I believe, to actually drill down and get to the bottom of what is actually causing your joint pain.
Yeah.
A lot of us kind of wake up one day with this pain and we just hope it will go away. And then, sometimes it might resolve. But for a lot of people, they go, oh, I've actually now been in pain for 6 to 8 months. I've done nothing about it. So one of my big messages today is that if you are experiencing joint pain, do go and speak to a physiotherapist or your GP to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So you asked specifically about arthritis. And so rheumatoid and osteo are two very different conditions, even though they're both rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis. It's hard to tell the difference. There's a lot of crossovers. A couple of little hints for rheumatoid arthritis is if you wake up in the morning and your joints are really stiff and puffy, and particularly if they're joints such as your fingers, your hands, your wrists, your toes, for example, that can be a sign. And if that pain doesn't really go away after, 30 minutes or so of moving around, that can be a sign. And if that was the case, you would go to your doctor. Your doctor can rule it out or test for rheumatoid arthritis, so with blood tests, and they go through a whole bunch of screening. So if you suspect that's you, just go to your GP and rule it out.
Yeah.
Osteoarthritis is more your wear and tear. So that tends to be more those heavy loaded joints. So think knees, hips, shoulders. And it's not to say it can absolutely be in other joints, but that would be another hint. Also, if you're, I've, been a marathon runner my whole life and now I'm getting sore knees, chances are that's leaning more towards your osteoarthritis than your rheumatoid. But then if you're just experiencing general pain, what we see in perimenopause, some of the really common ones that we see are tendinopathies. Yes. So tendinopathies tend to be tendon-related conditions. So rotator cuff, for example, it can be in your elbows as well. They're the good ones to have because they're quite easy to manage. Then you have things like plantar fasciitis. So that's in your feet. Yep. That's a bit of a doozy, that one. Yes. But again, you can absolutely treat it and manage it. Frozen shoulder is another one. Which is really, really common. So I think understanding, have I got something that's tendon related or have I got one of these other ones that might be fascia related, also informs how you treat the condition as well.
Looking at those general ones.
Yep.
When it comes to exercise, when joints hurt, our instinct can be to move less. Yes. So is that actually helpful or is it harmful?
It's a great question, and the answer is nuanced because we don't want your beautiful listeners to go out and start pounding away on sore joints. But funnily enough, inactivity is the enemy of our joints. So the great thing about our joints, they love to move, they want to be moved, they need to be moved, is we need to first understand what that condition is, and then we can work our way around it. So the great news is that there is always a workaround. And so say, for example, the tendon-related conditions. So if you've been to your physiotherapist, or say you went to your GP, they ruled out, autoimmune rheumatoid arthritis, but you've gone to see a physio and they're like, okay, you have got, rotator cuff tendonitis, for example, or elbow tendonitis. Actually, movement is the best thing for tendonitis. And what we find is that physios will often use a pain scale rating, whereas they're giving you those rehab exercises. If your pain scale sits between about a 3 to a 6 out of 10, then you work within that range. And so say they'll give you some exercises. So let's say, for example, you've got tendonitis in your rotator cuff. They're going to give you some snow angels against the wall, which are, leaning up against the wall. They're going to give you some little safe rotator cuff moves. If you're feeling a little bit of pain in that 3 to 6 range, that's okay.
Yeah.
You actually just deal with that pain and work with that pain. If that pain is getting up higher, then we know that we've overdone it. Or if in the 1 to 4 hours after exercising, you're experiencing more pain. But what you'll find is that working with that smaller amount of pain, you lose less muscle mass, you lose less strength. And so in the long run, your joint is more protected.
Yes. And I guess you're moving the joint as well. You're keeping it mobile and limber rather than just scrunching it up and not daring to move it.
And the other thing I see, it always happens, it's so frustrating, members on our program, all the ducks are lined up and they're motivated and they've found the gym and they've got their exercise program and everything's going really well, and then bang, they get an injury. And for a lot of them, they just stop.
Yeah.
So my real message is there is always a workaround. So, for example, if you're, out walking or running and then you're finding that you have got some knee or hip issues, there's what we call closed kinetic chain activities that you can move to. And this is a really important message for cardiovascular activity. We've got open and closed kinetic chain. So if you're worried about your joints, open kinetic chain activities are a little bit more risky. So think anything where your foot is not attached to something. So walking, running, sprinting. Whereas a closed kinetic chain activity is where your foot's attached to something. So think of a bicycle pedal, think of a rowing machine, for example, or some of those elliptical machines as well.
Yeah.
So if you're finding that you've got joint pain when you're out walking or running, you might find that when you move into the gym and you put your foot on a pedal, that's much safer for your joints. So these are the workarounds. For some people, swimming might be an example. So there always is something you can be doing, even with shoulders as well.
I guess that's tricky because then you're looking at the bone health side of things, and we know that sort of impact is good for bones as well to strengthen that. So I guess it's just is that more if it's in the acute phase that's yes.
So you touch on a really important point, which is that we don't do enough impact or high impact training. And I feel like when it comes to bone health and joint health, the message is loud and clear about strength training. And I feel like we're all nodding and we've got it, protein, strength training, tick. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. Impact training is also really, really important. And what we mean by impact training is anything that creates a strong force on our joints and on our bones. So it could be box jumps, for example. It could be, jumping lunges, skipping. But there's lots of high impact activities that aren't actually as high impact as you might think. So say, for example, you're worried about your ankles, knees and hips. Well, a slam ball is a great impact activity where it looks a bit like a medicine ball, but it's this squishy, very heavy kind of 5, 10 up to 20 kilo ball. You lift it up over your head or up to eye height and you slam that ball down on the ground. That's a form of impact training that won't put a lot of strain on your lower body, but it still will help with bone density. Boxing's another example where you can really work on your bone density without having to do a lot of jumping. But then with the impact training, which I would love to see more ladies in midlife doing, it's all about progressing slowly.
Yes.
So say, for example, a box jump, which I'd love all my ladies to be able to jump up to a height that's their knee height or higher. But you're not going to start that from ground zero.
Yeah.
Start with a small step and then you just slowly build your way up from there.
Absolutely. We've said that most people know, but let's talk about strength training specifically for joint integrity in midlife. Is that it's pretty essential, right?
Yeah, it's really, really essential. Joints love to work through their full range of movement.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to train the body to that. But similar to my box jump example, just then, if you haven't squatted before, I'm not going to get you to go in and lift a heavy barbell and squat all the way down, ass to grass, as we say. It's all about what we call progressive overload. So it's this idea that you start at a level, we meet you where you're at. And then we build up progressively around that 10 to 15%. So whether that is a load increase of 10 to 15% per week or whether it's a repetition increase. But unfortunately, unlike when we're younger, we can just walk in, throw a few weights around. We have to be a lot more intentional, structured, and that's where warm-ups and cool-downs are also absolutely crucial when it comes to strength training for women in midlife.
Absolutely. All right, so let's look at diet now.
Yes.
So obviously you've talked about inflammation and, avoiding that. So what does that mean in practical terms?
Yeah, so for most women in midlife, particularly if you're feeling like you're getting some joint pain and you're feeling like the weight is creeping on, taking an anti-inflammatory or a low inflammation approach with your diet can be really, really helpful. And that basically is two key principles. So the first key principle is to remove pro-inflammatory foods.
Yeah.
And for half of us, that's the biggest, most important factor.
Yeah.
So pro-inflammatory foods are the ones that I think you probably know I'm going to talk about, which are your ultra-processed foods. But don't think that I'm talking about Macca's and KFC alone, because these days there are lots of really sneaky ultra-processed foods that are marketed as really healthy. Basically, if it has a shelf life of 2 years, it's ultra-processed. So if you think about, the healthy protein bars, and there's a whole health section at the supermarket that is literally called health food section that can have a lot of ultra-processed foods. So, try to remove foods that have a really long shelf life. Try to remove foods that are fried. And when I say remove, we're not being perfect here. Even if you're Monday to Friday, you're following an anti-inflammatory approach, and then on the weekends you relax a little bit. Baked goods, so, biscuits, cookies, banana bread, all that sort of, those highly processed with highly refined flour in them, they're all the foods that, as our gut lining changes through perimenopause, foods that we tolerated really well suddenly trigger that inflammatory response in our body. So step one, strategy one, remove as much of those pro-inflammatory foods. Just do lots of healthy swaps. And then strategy number two is to dial up the beautiful anti-inflammatory foods, which are all the ones that we speak about. So all fruits, all veggies, all whole grains. But in particular, although I'm a nutritionist and I'm not supposed to have favorites, and I don't like the word superfoods, I do love my ladies in midlife to focus on lots of purples and blues. Blueberries, plums, beetroots, and even red cabbage. Anything you see that's got those really rich purple and blues are really, really high in the antioxidants that help to lower inflammation. And then we've got lots of the herbs and spices, so ginger, turmeric, curcumin, all of those are fantastic as well. And they really do make a difference. Like I put my ladies, I've got a 14-day anti-inflammatory meal plan that I share with my ladies, and straight away after a few days, they're like, oh my goodness, I woke up, my joints didn't feel nearly as stiff. Like it really does make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess one purpley red food that we shouldn't be having, and that is, of course, alcohol. the red wine doesn't count.
No, unfortunately.
That's to be said, Sarah.
All the cons outweigh the pros,
Yes.
I'm afraid. Yes, on the occasional glass, but no. If we're trying to support our joint health, then
certainly there's an inflammatory response going on.
Yes, sadly.
So what role does blood sugar balance play in inflammation and then joint pain?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And blood sugar balance becomes really, really important in midlife because it becomes a lot harder. Yeah. So foods that used to not spike our blood sugar now do spike our blood sugar. I really encourage all my ladies to go and get a blood test and ask for two markers. Ask for HbA1c, which is an indication of how well your body is controlling your blood sugar levels, and make sure your results are around 5.5 or below %. And another one is your insulin resistance score, and that's a marker that is called HOMA-IR. These are two really, really important markers because if you come back showing blood sugar instability or insulin resistance, you're going to find weight loss much, much harder. And so your focus needs to be around improving your insulin sensitivity and balancing blood sugar. And so why that's so important for joint health is around that inflammation that we were speaking about earlier. Yeah. So what we find is when we're not controlling our blood sugar well, we have this concept of metaflammation, okay, which is basically inflammation based on our metabolic health. And there are other blood markers. So, for our ladies, we make sure we measure high sensitivity CRP, creatine kinase, lactase dehydrogenase. These are all inflammatory markers that we like to see at an optimal level in our ladies. And so what does that look like practically? It's about dialing down the higher glycemic index foods. Yeah. So your high carb foods, your focaccia, your breads, your sugary treats. But if you love those foods and you want those foods, then there is a concept that some of my ladies like to use, which is called food sequencing. And this is the order that you eat your food in.
Yes.
And so if you start your meal, for example, with protein first and then your veggies, and then at the end you do your simple carbohydrates or maybe a sweet treat, you're going to spike your blood sugar a lot less than if you flipped that around and maybe started with the white bread or the white rice first. So that's just a little hack. It doesn't solve all your problems, but food sequencing means that you can bring your blood sugar, you can just control it that little bit better.
More for sure. So yes, let's talk about the shift in body composition during menopause that affects joint load and pain. So I guess all of those things that we're saying, all those diets that we're talking about following, that's going to help you control that change in body composition.
Yeah,
although it may still happen to a degree.
I think the two key goals when it comes to our body composition, it's no longer being bikini ready. So if you are, hats off to you. But it really is twofold. Number one, it's about preserving our beautiful muscle that we do have and preventing muscle loss. And then number two, it's about controlling, managing, and in some cases reducing our body fat. And you got two types of body fat. You've got subcutaneous and visceral. So the subcutaneous, under the skin, not as pro-inflammatory. And then it's the visceral fat that starts to settle around our organs. So if you're noticing that your pants are a bit harder to do up, or that you're starting to get more of that belly fat, that is a sign that you need to try to get on top of that. And even if it's not about reducing weight, but it's about preventing putting on any more weight, that can still be a really, really healthy goal for people. And then secondly, it's about protecting that muscle that we will lose. And particularly if you injure a big joint like a hip or a knee, your activity levels will really drop down if you're not careful and you don't have a good workaround. So that's why joint health is so important in this body composition piece.
Yes, they're all absolutely linked. And also other factors are linked, I guess, as well. Things like sleep, stress, and hydration. How do things like that influence joint pain?
Yeah, they're all interconnected. So firstly, if we look at hydration, I mentioned earlier that joints become stiffer and less hydrated as we lose our estrogen levels. So just the simple fact of making sure that your cells are as hydrated as possible through drinking water is really, really important. A really simple hack to know if you're drinking enough water is to just look at your urine color. Honestly, it's the easiest way. If you've got lovely, clear urine, it's, just got a tinge of yellow in it, you are doing fantastically. If it's very, very dark, then, that's honestly the
surest sign that,
I get a lot of women really hung up on hydration when they don't need to be. It's not that hard to get it right.
Yeah.
So that would be that. And then when we're looking at sleep, I think a really important factor to consider is that the first 2 sleep cycles of the night are when our body releases a huge amount of growth hormone and testosterone, which is very repairing. So if we're exercising regularly and putting our bodies under load, which we should be, it's the sleep cycles, particularly the first 2, when all the repair happens. So if you're either going to bed really late or you're chronically sleep deprived by choice or by the fact that you're menopausal and, not by choice, we've got this concept of can't sleep versus won't sleep. If you, can't sleep because of menopausal symptoms and things like that, that's a different strategy. And if you won't sleep because of your habits, staying up late, scrolling, etc., that we're all guilty of, it's those 2 sleep cycles that are super, super important for repair and rebuilding of our joints. So if you are sleep deprived, just be aware of that when you're training the next day, because you are going to find that your joints are slightly more susceptible to injury when you're chronically sleep deprived.
That's very interesting. And stress. Where do we start there? That's another whole podcast in itself, isn't it? I mean, the good news is that a lot of these exercises, I'm sure slamming down a squash ball or a slam ball, yes, or boxing, they're great stress relievers.
Yes.
But, I guess it is something that we just need to be aware of, that there is that link there. And all of those things, I guess, we know about, the mindfulness, the meditation,
Well, exercise is the perfect antidote to stress because we are having a physiological response to a stress. So even if your stress is psychological, your body doesn't know whether it's, a woolly mammoth bearing down on you or, whether it's a stressful life incident like a divorce or a family trauma or whatnot. When you have a physical response, so you're actually fighting or flighting, what happens is that allows all those stress hormones to circulate and to do their job. And then the key, I mentioned earlier, warm up and cool down, which I'll touch on. But if we focus on the cool down for a moment, that is your chance to tell your body that the woolly mammoth has gone, even if he's your ex-husband and it hasn't. But it's your chance for that couple of minutes to just lay on your back on the floor at the gym or, out in the park, to tell your body that everything's calm, to take just a few minutes of some belly breaths. And what that will do to clear out your cortisol, to clear out your adrenaline, will do wonders. And it really is, it can't be underestimated, the impact that can have. And particularly if you've had a stressful incident, like a fight with someone or a stressful work situation. If you get out there and have a walk or a workout of some sort and then do that couple of minutes of cool down, it is so much healthier for you. You've addressed that and released and detoxified all those stress hormones.
So let's just quickly touch on warm-ups and cool downs. Obviously there's the deep belly breathing, but is there any specific thing we should be doing or not doing when it comes to that at this time of our lives?
So warm-ups and cool downs. So if we think about strategies, if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to be one of those 4 out of 10 ladies that don't experience joint pain.
The most of us.
Yes. I'm sure a lot of us that ship sailed, but let's say we want to prevent it. I cannot stress enough the importance of a warm-up. And there's 2 parts to a warm-up that are equally important, and we often miss one or both of them. So the first part of your warm-up is you need to increase your core body temperature. So that's when you get to the gym or you're out. That's where you need to do some cardiovascular activity. It could just be, a slower walk for 2 or 3 minutes. It could be sitting on the bike. But I would encourage, if you're sitting on the bike in the gym, I would encourage you to do something called the assault bike. Horrible name, but it's just a bike that has arms that move as well. So that way, as you're warming up, you're also moving your upper body and lower body. But you need to do an activity that raises your core temperature. That's the first stage of a warm-up. The second stage of a warm-up is to move your joints through their full range, particularly focusing on the movement patterns that you're going to be doing in the gym. So for example, today was deadlift day for me in the gym. So when I warmed up in the morning, I increased my core temperature by doing my assault bike for 2 minutes. And then I did a whole bunch of movement mobility patterns that mimicked my deadlift. So something called good mornings. I did spinal twists. So I'm moving my joints through their full range. And if you've got, for example, you sit on your desk a lot and you're hunched forward all day, well, that's your opportunity to lay over a foam roller and to do the reverse activities to what you're doing all day. So they're the two phases to a warm-up. It's the increasing of core temperature, but then it's moving your joints through their full range. And there are lots of apps, YouTube videos. You can ask ChatGPT to give me a shoulder mobility warm-up for a woman in midlife with stiff shoulders, for example. And you'll be able to put together something pretty comprehensive.
Fantastic. And then I guess cool down when it comes to stretching. Should we be stretching more delicately? Is there anything we need to be aware of?
I think when it comes to stretching, it's very individual. So think about your tightest areas, because for most of us, what happens as we age is we have tight muscles that get tighter and weak muscles that get weaker. And usually they're opposites. So think about your lower back, for example. Tight lower back, and then opposite that is weak core. So for some of us, it could be our lower back. For some of us, it could be our neck. So definitely targeting the areas that feel particularly tight for you. And if you've got some stretches that really feel nice on your body, then listen to your body and lean into those stretches. If you've got a buddy, there's something called PNF stretching, which is a type of stretching where you are working against some resistance with your body. That can be a really fast way to increase your flexibility as well, but kind of hard to explain over a podcast. But PNF stretching is...
Google that as well.
Yeah, is a great one.
And I guess, a lot of women are, exploring HRT. Is there much evidence that hormone therapy can improve joint pain for women?
I would think of it as an auxiliary and a support, but not as a remedy.
Yes. Yeah.
So if your joint stiffness is due to that fluctuating and then declining estrogen, just by having a hormone optimization strategy, whether that's HRT or whether that's something different, can just help to support that. But if you're sitting here with joint pain and you're thinking that, if I go on HRT, that's going to solve my problems, you might
get out of going to the gym.
You might be disappointed. There are it's definitely part of the picture, and it can help in a preventative way. But there are other supplements as well that I can briefly touch on that can also help if you are experiencing joint pain. Again, not a magic bullet, but there's evidence to show that they can support your joints as they are healing. And there's some really positive research around collagen, because we lose up to 30% of our collagen in the 5 years post-menopause. And collagen is an important building structure of joints. Supplementing with collagen as a preventative, then also if you have got some joint pain. And there's a type of collagen called Fortigel, and that's a particular type of hydrolyzed collagen that has a lot of clinical research behind it. So if you look for a brand that has Fortigel in it, that tends to really target joint health. So that would be good. That's one that is kind of a blanket one that, is very safe to take, very innocuous as far as any other side effects. And then if someone's going through a severe joint issue, then conjoint and glucosamine are also reasonably well researched. Again, they're not going to, set the world on fire, but some people do swear by them.
Yeah. So I guess, as you said, your message was one of hope.
Yes.
So for those women out there that are going through some joint pains, I guess they just want to know it is reversible.
Yes. Yes.
And there are certainly a lot of things in place that can help them.
Yeah. So I think if that's you, first of all, my heart goes out to you. I had some shoulder pain for the first time in my whole life. Last year, took 6 months, very frustrating.
Yeah.
So my message would be, first of all, you're not going to be in pain forever. I would, number one, go and seek professional guidance. You can start with your GP if you suspect it might be rheumatoid arthritis. If you think it's pretty much a musculoskeletal thing, go straight to a physiotherapist. If you can find a physiotherapist that's also an exercise physiologist, that's a really great combo, because a physio, sometimes they'll see you, they'll treat you, they'll scribble down some exercises on a piece of paper and you're off on your own. Whereas an EP, an exercise physiologist, is more like a personal trainer with extra training where they'll take you into the gym and they'll work with you through your workouts. So I would highly recommend you go and get that diagnosed. Is it fascia? Is it tendinitis? Then you can know, I can actually work through this with a bit of pain in a 3 to 6. So find out, get diagnosed. What exactly is it? And then work with that expert for the workarounds. Okay, I can't run, but I can cycle or swim. Okay, I can't squat, but I can do the leg press or the leg extension or these, modified moves, because the enemy of our joints is inactivity. Yeah. And if our lower body's out, there's lots you can do with your upper body. If your upper body's out, there's lots you can do with your lower body. So work hard to do the workaround. Your body will respond really well to movement. The stronger you are, the more protected your joints are. So really focus on that strength training. Really focus on keeping those inflammation levels down. And then you'll find you'll sail through this. And once you're out the other side, you'll be ready for that second or third act, and you'll be feeling stronger than ever.
Absolutely. Well, look, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for those amazing, amazing insights and advice. I got so much out of that. I hope today's conversation has reassured that while joint pain in menopause is common, it's not something you simply have to accept, and there's plenty we can do to avoid hobbling around in pain all day. Now, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who's been quietly wondering why her body suddenly feels different. Yes, these conversations really matter, because the more we talk about midlife health openly, the more empowered we all become. Thank you again, Amelia, for taking the time today.
My absolute pleasure.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more expert conversations designed to help you not just survive menopause, but truly thrive in it. Until next time, take care of your joints and yourself.